Today we are strapping in for a really practical discussion. We're moving past the prepper subculture and into what is now, a mainstream reality.
It really is.
And our source material for this is the guide by Creek Stewart, Build the Perfect Bug Out Bag. We're here because, well, the awareness has shifted. It's not if a major disaster will strike anymore, it's when.
Exactly. And our mission today is pretty straightforward. We want to give you a shortcut to a fully thought out, really efficient 72-hour disaster kit.
The Bug Out Bag, or BOB.
The BOB, yeah. We're basically going to distill the core philosophy, the essential gear, all of it, right down into actionable knowledge. We're creating your personal SCHAP Pits the Fan policy.
I like that framing. It's an insurance policy, but let's define our terms. What exactly does Stewart mean by bugging out?
So he defines it as the immediate, deliberate decision to abandon your home.
Okay.
It's triggered by some unexpected imminent emergency that makes staying put more dangerous than leaving. We're talking about massive natural events.
Hurricanes, wildfires, that sort of thing.
Right, or even man-made failures, a total grid collapse, infrastructure failure. History shows that when chaos really scales up, all the official aid systems, city, state, federal, they just crumble.
So you're on your own.
You're on your own. Self-sufficiency becomes everything.
So if the BOB is this lifeline, it can't be a static thing you just buy and forget about. Stewart really emphasizes this, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He calls it a dynamic relationship, not a checklist.
A relationship.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. If you get married, if you have kids, if you move from, say, Minnesota to Arizona, your whole kit needs to be reevaluated.
That makes sense.
He strongly recommends a full review twice a year. Think November and May. That's when you rotate food, check medications, swap seasonal clothes.
You check the fit of the bag itself, I'd imagine.
Exactly. Your body changes.
Yeah.
And your situation. I mean, if you live on the 10th floor of an apartment, your November review needs to include checking your rope escape kit. That's a very different priority than for someone in a ranch house.
Okay, let's break this down then. Let's start with the foundation. The container. The bag itself. Why is a backpack the only real choice for Creek Stewart?
He is incredibly clear on this. Ditch the duffel bags. Forget any kind of handheld kit.
Why?
A backpack is engineered to distribute weight evenly across your whole frame. It pushes the load onto your hips, not your shoulders, which, massively reduces fatigue.
And it keeps your hands free?
Keeps your hands completely free for navigation, for self-defense, for helping your kids. And because it's strapped to you, you're not going to just drop your entire life support system.
Makes sense. But backpack is a huge category. Stewart breaks it down into three main types.
He does. The first is the frameless pack. It's small, it's cheap, and it's definitely not what you want for a primary BOB.
Okay, so we can set that one aside. What are the serious contenders?
The next two. First, you've got the external frame pack. This is the traditional workhorse. They handle really heavy, awkward loads beautifully.
And the big advantage is airflow, right?
Yes, exactly. The frame keeps the pack body off your back, so you get superior air circulation. If you live somewhere hot and humid, that's a huge deal.
Right, prevents chafing, heat exhaustion.
For sure. But the trade-off is they can feel a bit shifty, a little top-heavy. So if you're moving fast on rough terrain, balance can be an issue.
Which brings us to his preferred style, the internal frame pack. So if the external frame is great for hot weather, why does he trade that comfort? What problem is he trying to solve?
Stability. He's solving for stability and maneuverability. The internal frame has support built right into the pack's body, and it sits flush against your back.
So it moves with you.
It totally reduces load shifting. So if you need to move quickly through, say, dense woods or urban rubble, that stability is critical. The drawback, like you said, is you get pretty sweaty.
Okay, so choosing the right size. It sounds tricky. Not too big, not too small. What's the rule for buying one?
The golden rule is you have to buy it in person, not online.
You need to try it on.
You have to try it on, and you need to ask them to load it with weight bags to simulate a full pack. The advice he gives is to tell the store employee you're planning a 3 to 5 day backpacking trip.
That gives them the perfect context.
Exactly. It guides the size and fit selection without you having to announce you're building a doomsday bag.
And this leads right into something really tactical he warns about, the stealth factor. Don't build a tricked out looking BOB.
This is a huge self-defense tip. It's about blending in.
The gray man theory.
Pretty much. In a disaster, when resources are scarce, you want to look less prepared, not more. If your pack is covered in military webbing and tactical gear, you're a walking advertisement.
You're a target.
You're a target. You're telling everyone you have life-saving supplies. Camouflage isn't just about color patterns, it's about social blending.
That completely shifts the focus. It's not just about gear, it's about social defense.
It is. And that principle applies to the inside of the pack, too. You need compartments. Avoid what he calls a black hole pack.
Right, where you have to dump everything out just to find a flashlight.
In a high-stress moment, fumbling for gear could be fatal.
Okay, let's move to the non-negotiables inside the bag. The big priorities, starting with water. We know the rule of 3. 3 hours without shelter in extreme conditions.
Right. And for water, the rule is an average adult needs at least 1 liter a day, minimum. So for a 72-hour kit, that's a non-negotiable 3 liters per person.
And Stewart emphasizes redundancy with your container.
Oh, it's essential. A single water bladder can get punctured, and then you've lost everything. You have to divide your water across 3 different containers.
What are the 3?
First, a durable, wide-mouth Nalgene bottle. It's tough, easy to clean. Second, a metal water bottle. This is critical because it's your tool for boiling water.
Your backup purifier.
Exactly. And third, a collapsible soft bottle. You drink from that one first because as you empty it, it shrinks down and saves space and weight.
I love the little multi-use tips in the book. Tell us about the duct tape trick.
It's brilliant. Just wrap 10 to 15 feet of good duct tape tightly around your hard Nalgene bottle. It takes up 0 extra space, and now you've got a supply for repairs, for bandages, whatever.
Okay, so once that packed water is gone, we're into purification. What's the breakdown on boiling versus modern filters? And what's the difference between a filter and a purifier?
Okay, so boiling is the gold standard. It's 100% effective against everything. Bacteria, viruses, cysts. The downsides. It takes fuel, it takes time, and a fire can give away your position.
Right.
Now, when you get into the tech, the distinction is crucial. A filter is like a physical net. It's great at catching the big stuff, like bacteria and cysts.
He calls them baseballs and softballs.
Right. But viruses are like microscopic marbles. They can slip right through that net.
So that's where a purifier comes in.
Exactly. A purifier combines the physical filter with a second step, usually a chemical or UV treatment, to kill those invisible viruses.
Got it. So the chemical is the safety net.
Precisely. For gear, pump filters are fast, but they're bulky and expensive. He really likes chemical tablets as a compact backup. But the key thing to remember is they only work on water that's already pretty clear.
Okay, let's talk food. Stewart's priority is high calorie density. Dried meat, nuts.
Yep, and he specifically recommends meals ready to eat or MREs. They're self-contained, they pack over 1,000 calories, and they're incredibly durable. Plus, many have a water-activated chemical heater.
But MREs are so heavy. Why not just lighter backpacking meals? Is that heater really worth the wait?
That's a great question. It comes down to reliability under stress. MREs give you instant, complete energy without needing a pot or an external stove if you're forced to move fast. Freeze-dried meals are lighter, yes, but they require boiling water and soaking time.
So it's about efficiency.
It's all about efficiency. Only pack food that requires, at most, just hot water for prep. Anything more complicated is a waste of resources.
And to boil that water, we need a pot.
A dedicated metal pot, at least 1 liter, and a small metal cup for individual servings. For stove, he likes these solid fuel tablet stoves, like an Espit. They're super lightweight. Pack about 6 fuel tablets for 2 adults for 72 hours.
All right, clothing. Your primary defense against exposure, which is a huge killer. What's the #1 non-negotiable rule?
Rule number 1 is stay away from cotton.
Cotton kills.
It does. It absorbs moisture like a sponge, it takes forever to dry, and it has 0 insulation value when it's wet. You need fabrics that wick moisture and dry fast.
Wool, fleece, synthetics.
Wool and wool blends, fleeces, nylons, polyesters, and wool gets a special mention because it's the one fabric that still insulates you even when it's damp.
And the technique for wearing these is layering. How do we build that system?
Layering traps dead air space for warmth. You start with a lightweight, form-fitting wicking base layer polyester or nylon, something that won't get itchy like wool can against the skin. Then a mid-weight fleece for insulation. Then a heavy fleece or a wool sweater for serious warmth. And finally, a waterproof, breathable outer shell. That's your wind and rain break.
Let's pivot to a tough topic. Self-defense. Stewart calls it the ugly truth of a post-disaster world.
And it is ugly. The truth is that violent crime goes up after every disaster that overwhelms public safety. When systems fail, people get desperate.
So his first line of defense isn't a weapon.
Not at all. It's what he calls self-offense. proactive avoidance. It's 90% psychological. You have to check your ego, be humble, don't flaunt your supplies, and listen to your gut. His guideline is stark. Trust no one.
But when avoidance fails, what are the practical non-firearm tools he recommends?
He starts with pepper spray, a good one, with a high SHU rating in a stream or foam pattern so it doesn't blow back on you. Then you have long-reach tools like a machete.
Which is also a useful tool for clearing brush.
Exactly. It's multi-use. But as a weapon, its reach makes it a great deterrent.
And for those who do choose to pack a firearm, what's the recommendation?
He suggests a pistol for its concealability and lightweight ammo. And, crucially, he favors a revolver over a semi-automatic, specifically a .357 Magnum.
Why a revolver?
Simplicity and reliability. In a dirty, high-stress environment, a revolver is just far less likely to jam. Plus, a .357 can also fire the more common .38 caliber rounds, which adds flexibility. And of course, you absolutely must know your local laws.
Of course. Okay, next up, information and navigation. Assuming cell phones and GPS are down, what's the analog backup?
You must have a physical, laminated area map. And for communication, the key item is a hand crank emergency radio.
And it has to have one specific feature.
It must have the NOAA weather radio band. That's how you get official updates on weather, routes, everything. For signaling, you need options. A powerful flashlight for Morse code, reflective survival blankets, a signal mirror, and a good whistle.
He recommends the Fox 40.
Yeah, it's 120 decibel blast, takes way less energy than screaming, and travels much farther.
We also need to think about logistics for dependents, especially when cars are useless.
This has to be planned in advance. For little kids, a rugged three-wheeled stroller or an off-road wagon. For elderly or disabled family members, the crucial warning is never rely on battery-powered mobility devices.
Because when the battery dies...
It becomes 1,000 pounds of useless metal.
Hmm.
You have to plan for a manual push wheelchair.
And pets?
You have to decide which pets you're taking before the crisis. They need their own food, meds, and ID. He even suggests things like saddlebag dog packs. Make the pet a logistical asset if you can.
So we've covered the gear. Let's talk about the investment in yourself, mental and physical fortitude.
This is everything. Your mind is your most valuable resource. Your body is your most valuable tool. Mental readiness comes from practice, from repetition so you don't panic.
And physical readiness means actually being able to carry that 40-pound pack for miles.
For miles. And making sure some nagging old injury doesn't take you out when you need to perform.
So what are the key practice exercises Stewart says we have to do?
He outlines a few core drills. First, fire. You have to practice building a fire with only the tools in your bag until you can do it at night, in the rain. Second, meals. Cook a full meal with only your BOB resources to see how much fuel and water you actually use.
And water purification.
Yes. Memorize the instructions for your tablets. Practice assembling your filter until you can do it blindfolded.
And what's the final drill that tests the whole system?
The loaded hike. Hike 5 miles with your fully loaded BOB. Take your family, take the wagon, take the dog. Do it every couple of months. It is merciless at revealing what's wrong with your gear and your conditioning.
It's the ultimate stress test. Okay, last couple of points. Besides the biannual review, what's the final security tip for protecting this investment?
You have to hide the bag itself. He tells a great story about a break-in at his own house. The thieves stole everything but never found his BOB.
Why not?
He had hidden it deep inside a big laundry basket, covered with dirty clothes. The key is to make your most valuable asset look completely worthless.
That really drives it home. So, to wrap this up, we've covered the gear, the systems, the mindset, all from Creek Stewart's Build the Perfect Bug Out Bag. Preparedness is not a purchase, it's a lifestyle.
It is, and it all connects back to that fundamental truth. Knowledge is very lightweight. The more you know, the more you practice, the less physical gear you actually need to carry. That's why the drills are so important.
That raises a final provocative question for you, our listener, to think about. You have now put all this effort into gathering the knowledge and the tools for a successful bug out. Stewart emphasizes that none of it matters if you lack the strength and endurance to actually perform. If your body is your most valuable tool, how are you prioritizing the physical training required to carry this life-saving investment for 72 hours? That is the real final frontier of preparedness.